मित्रों नमस्कार। इस बार बड़ा अवसर रहा यूएई की यात्रा का। इस यात्रा में वैसे तो बहुत कुछ देखा समझा, पर एक बड़ा पड़ाव इस यात्रा का रहा श्री शिहाब गनेम से भेंट का। आप एक बहुत बड़े कवि हैं, आप एक अनुवादक हैं, पर उस सबसे बड़े आप एक व्यक्तित्व हैं। आपसे मिलना मानो किसी संत से मिलने जैसा हो। आप पहले ऐसे अरबी व्यक्ति हैं जिन्हें टैगोर पीस अवार्ड से नवाजा गया। आपकी 100 से अधिक किताबें हैं। आप जिस पारिवारिक पृष्ठभूमि से आते हैं उसका गांधी से ताल्लुक़ रहा है। उन्होंने भारत की आज़ादी के दौरान कविताएं लिखी हैं। आप एक तरह से कहें तो अरब की आवाज़ हैं। आप लगातार इस तरह की कोशिश करते हैं कि साहित्य और कविता के माध्यम से देशों के बीच में, सभ्यताओं के बीच में एक पुल बनने का काम किया जा सके। आपने बहुत सारी किताबों को आप देखिएगा कि अरबी से अन्य भाषाओं में अनुदित किया है और अन्य भाषाओं से आप अरबी में उन्हें लेकर आए हैं। आपका भारत से विशेष प्रेम रहा है। आपने आईआईटी रुड़की से एमटेक किया है और लगातार अलग अलग समय पर भारत आते रहे हैं और भारत के बारे में बहुत ही स्वस्थ और विस्तृत दृष्टिकोण उनका है। शिहाब गनेम जी एक और कार्यक्रम के लिए बहुत जाने जाते हैं। वो है उनका पोइटिक हार्ट को लेके किया गया एक अभियान की शुरुआत। ये विभिन्न भाषाओं के कवियों के लिए एक साझा मंच है और दुनिया भर से कवियों को इस कार्यक्रम के लिए आमंत्रित किया जाता है। कई सांस्कृतिक कार्यक्रम इसमें रहते हैं। बच्चों को भी कविता पाठ का मौका इस बड़े कार्यक्रम में मिलता है। तो इस कार्यक्रम की आपने शुरुआत की थी और फिर ये एक बड़े कारवां का जो स्वरूप है वो धारण करता चला गया। इस पूरी बातचीत के लिए जो विशेष सहयोग रहा, जिनके सहयोग के बिना ये बातचीत संभव थी ही नहीं, वो है श्री कुलभूषण व्यास जी। आप यूएई में रहते हैं और पब्लिकेशन का लगातार काम करते हैं। मेरे अलावा इस बातचीत के साक्षी बने श्री कमलेश भट्ट कमल जी। आप लेखक हैं, कवि हैं, आलोचक हैं। दिल्ली से आप भी पोइटिक हार्ट प्रोग्राम के लिए ख़ास तौर से पधारे थे। तो आइए आपको श्री गनेम के साथ हमारी हुई ये महत्वपूर्ण बातचीत सुनवाते हैं और नितांत नूतन और आपको समृद्ध कर देने वाले अनुभव की तरफ लिए चलते हैं।
You know, I was born in Aden, and the men of the most famous, prominent people in Aden culturally at that time were my grandfather Luqman, my mother's father, and my father. And Luqman was a personal friend of Mahatma Gandhi. And so he came once to Aden for the round table discussions with the British for independence in the 30s, early 30s. And he and Luqman was there also translating his speech to the public, Arabic public. And he took my mother with him. My mother was at that time as a young girl, a teenager, maybe 12 years or so. And she went with him and she met Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi talked to her, just as friendly, She told me, you see, I know Gandhi personally, you don't know him. And anyway, that is, and Gandhi was the person who advised Luqman to study law and to start a newspaper to fight for freedom, because Aden was a British colony at that time. And that's what my grandfather did. He was considered to be the Renaissance man of Aden and South Yemen. So he started the first newspapers in Arabic, and then the first newspaper in English, and they continued until the independence time. And he also went to Delhi to Bombay University, and he completed his bar. It's called advocate degree in 2 years only, because he was already well read in Sharia law and so many other things, So he went there, and he was a very fast person, very, very fast person. I was amazed by him. And he influenced me also. But of course, my father was a bigger influence because he was a poet. Luqman was a writer, and he was a journalist and barrister and so on. So these two people have a lot of influence on me. And the son of my eldest son of my grandfather, my mother's brother, also he got his first degree from, I think, Aligarh University. But then he studied in Cairo and also in America, and got a higher degree, master from America. And my uncles are all graduates. The first graduates, except my father was the first graduate in the whole of the peninsula. In the whole of the Arabian Peninsula, means all the GCC countries, the 6 GCC countries in Yemen, he was the number 1 to get a degree. And he was the number 1 in his group. He got, you can see he got a distinction, and so he was the top of the faculty of arts in his year. And he got the poetry prize also. So that is some of the connections. Of course, I studied in Eden College, and there were Indian friends with me in the college. So it was mainly Arabs, but there were some Indian people. That was the first effect. Then I studied in Roorkee University. I did a master's degree after I completed my engineering degrees. I did 2 engineering degrees, and I did 2 management diplomas from London and Birmingham. And before that, I got the Bachelor of Mechanical Engineer and Bachelor of Electrical Engineer from Scotland, Aberdeen University. Then I went to Roorkee to study water resources development. And Roorkee at that time was the number 1 civil engineering university in India. And then it became an IIT. And it was established by Nehru himself, and together with Dag Hammarskjöld. Dag Hammarskjöld was the first UN secretary, general secretary. And Nehru was very interested in developing the agriculture and also the industry. That was his policy. Nehru had that aim. So he developed the Water Resources Development Center, and it received also students from different parts of Far East, from Philippines, from different parts of Far East, and from also I was the first Arab to study in that institute. So, and I got a first class water resources development master degree. So, and then I worked first in Aden as the deputy permanent secretary of public works and communications. Later, I moved to Lebanon. I was the chief engineer of an engineering company, and I worked as the plant manager in Dubai of an international company called Eternit, a Swiss company. And then I became the chief engineer of Jebel Ali Free Zone, the head of engineering of Jabal Ali Free Zone, which was the biggest free zone in the Middle East. And also, I was chief engineer of the Dubai ports. And Jabal Ali port is considered to be the biggest man-made port in the world. Okay. So it was a big job. And at the end of my service, I worked for a couple of years as the CEO of the technology park. And then retired and worked mainly doing writing and poetry, writing books. I have written more than 100 books.
In your earliest days, when did you start to write a poem? And then what aspects of the writing did you opt by time to time? So we would like to know about your poetic journey or journey as a writer.
The biggest two poets in Aden were my father, and he was the head of the Poetry Society and so many other things, maybe 7 or 8 things. He was a very famous man. And the other top poet was also Ali Luqman, my uncle, my maternal uncle. But I also married his daughter. So he was also my father-in-law. And that's his certificate. He graduated in the early 40s as the first journalist, the first man to get a journalist degree in Aden in Yemen. But he was a prolific poet also. Even I think he wrote more than my father. But all of them, both of them have big whole works. And the thing that makes them very exceptional in the Arab world is that both of them were not only poets, but they wrote poetry, drama, same like Shakespeare style, you know. Shakespeare was mainly a poet of drama. You know, he wrote Hamlet and Macbeth and this and that. And they were writing dramas. So they wrote each of them. Once they published, they wrote more, but they published 5 dramas in poetry. And this is very rare in the Arab world. See, I have never written a poetry drama, and I don't know personally, except 1 or 2 people maybe who have tried to write a poetry drama. Because Arabic poetry is mainly love poetry and, you know, what you call it, not drama verse, but lyrical kind of verse. Lyrical kind of verse.
Would you please, if you could recollect any of the poem of your father's, what you have liked the most?
No, but I have translated 1 or 2 of his poems. I can read for you 1 poem. Now we are making the interview about my father. We will not finish even after 1 week. But he is saying here a poem. When he was young, he was writing a love poem. He says, "You walk not on the ground, but on my heart. That is the music of footsteps, mingled with my soul and mind. Walk along as you wish, and have no pity for a lover, unable to endure more pain or more hope in nearness or in far. The Lord has created you not of flesh and blood like other mortals, but of rays of holiness in which my heart bathes. He has gathered you in colors of the most magnificent patterns, displaying beauty in all its perfection." So it goes on like that. But, you know, at the end he says, "Pray do not conjure up a fear of me, for I am but a poet who would not hurt a fly. But for my burning desire to behold your beauty, I would have hidden you like a secret in my heart. Then stopped my heart from throbbing, lest you may be disturbed. He said, لست أدري ما الذي تخشين مني، لست أدري وأنا الشاعر لا أرضى لمخلوق بضري، أنا لولا لوعتي صنتك في قلبي كسري ومنعت القلب أن يخفق حتى لا تضري.
So further we would like to know that how did you proceeded in your literary
You know, I was living in the house of a poet, a great poet, and my mother's house, her father and his children were all educated, highly educated, all teachers and educated, and therefore me and my brothers and sisters were influenced by this environment. And my father used to bring us books when I was born, during the war. And at that time, books were not so much available. But he used to bring us magazines, he used to bring us books as children. So my elder brother, he is also a poet, older than me, and he was the head of the Society of Neurology in Canada. He's a big, famous neurologist, and he was a poet and a writer, and he was the head of the Writers Association in Canada. So, and he received the Martin Luther King Award. Huh? So he's also, so all my brothers are highly, intellectual, educated, and they are all professors. I'm not a professor because I was a professional engineer. But they were also professionals as doctors, medical doctors. All of them are doctors, even my sister. And they're all professors. But they also played, used to go to university and teach. My sister was the head of the educational department in the university. So this atmosphere, when you live with people who have ideals, they were all idealistic people, and you can say they are Renaissance people. So they instilled in us lofty ideas, and poetry was in the bookcases of my father. So I read all the famous poets when I was only a teenager. By that time, and me and my brother and my other two brothers, they all published at least one book of verse, each of them. So, but I published 27 books of verse. But my brothers, they published. My elder brother, I think, published 2 books, and the others published 1 book, because they are not poetry was for them not the same like me. For me, poetry was my life. I knew that I was in love of poetry when I was about 8 to 9. I was in the second form in the school, and they used to, at that time, second primary, they teach you only nursery rhymes and things like that. Children's songs. But I was walking in the corridor one day of the school during the classes and heard the boys of the class above us, the 3rd class. And they were reciting poetry of Abu Tammam and Antar and the famous poets of 1,000 years before. And I was mesmerized. I stayed there like that, listening to them outside the window. The window sill was short. The windows were long, high windows, but I could, I can see inside. They were not high as a little boy of 8 years old. And I was there and mesmerized. I didn't move. And suddenly the teacher noticed me. This boy standing there, and he came out. Very angry. He said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "I'm going to the toilet," or something like that. I said, I'll take you to the headmaster to punish you, Go back to your class. I said, it's okay. I went away. But at that moment when I was about 8, I realized that I was crazy about poetry. And I used to, love it as, I loved several subjects. I was very good at mathematics and other subjects, but poetry was a love for me. So from that time, I used to read, me and Case, my elder brother, we used to sit and read the books, the diwans. My father had already a book which we nearly all learned by heart, because our father, and it was simple. And he influenced me. His style influenced me for many years. And he was my teacher. So when I started writing, and he discovered that, my mother discovered that I was writing, she snatched the poem and took it. And she said, I will show it to your father. I said, please don't. I was afraid, Please don't. And she said, no. And she showed it to him. And he says, the boy is gifted. He needs to develop it. I mean, he can see that it is not mature, but it has the flame of poetry in it. And from that, then I went to the university, and I used to send him my attempts. I was at that time 19, 20. So I used to send him, and I was very eager waiting, because at that time there was no telephone. We used to wait for 1 week for the letter to go and 1 week to come back. And I used to send him I wrote these drafts, and he will tell me, this is good, this is not. And then he said, this has to be published. And of course I was in Scotland. I had had no connections, nothing. But he published for me the first poems. And then I continued to publish, and then I began to publish later in all the magazines in the Arab world. So I have published, at one time I published in more than 100 magazines and newspapers. And then I began to reduce it, to keep it only for the elite magazines and newspapers. And I began to become known. And I did 3 types. My poetry books, which are about 1/3 of my books, or less than 1/3, maybe 1/4 of my books, 27 Arabic and maybe 2 in English. But then I wrote prose articles, mostly related to poetry and literature and things like that. And also I wrote a lot of it about my father and my people I knew personally, teachers and things like these people, my friends, poets, and that is my prose writing is generally related to poetry. Then I started in 1989 to publish every week a translated poem, because Khalij Times, they asked me, they saw my writing in the in-house magazine of Jabal Ali. I was in charge of that. Actually, when I was at school, they selected me as a member of the editorial board of the college magazine. I was at that time only in the 3rd form, because of the secondary school. And I was, I think, the first one to be taken at that level. Others were taken at 4th form, 5th form, 6th form. But I was taken in 3rd form. And later, when I was in the 5th form, I became the chief editor of the magazine, 5th form and 6th form. So it was published in Arabic and English, the magazine. That was in 1988. I joined Jabal Ali Free Zone as the chief engineer, the director of engineering, and there was an in-house magazine. So I was in charge of the cultural part. There are different other parts, commercial part, this and that, but I was in charge of the cultural part. So I used to translate poems in it. And the magazine was circulated, apparently the newspapers like Kadish Times and Gulf News in the country, they knew about them, about this. So they contacted me, said, we want you to write us a weekly column, translation of your poems. I said, okay. Then after 1 week, I told them, no, why didn't make it also for the UAE poets? I said, okay, go ahead. Then I translated a poem of one of my colleagues in the UAE poets. It was called the death of the newspaper boy, Medical, the newspaper boy. He died whilst he was selling newspapers at the corners of the streets, and some crazy man hit him and killed him. And it was, the man wrote a poem, because this is a poor Indian boy who came to earn some money for his family, and yet he lost his life, and even his family, and it was a humanistic poem. So I translated it. And that was, I think, the second poem I translated. And then then I went one day to the pump station to fill petrol, and they used to give us a book, as I was a director of Jabal Ali. So I write my name, Shihab Ghanem, for the petrol filled in the tank. It was at the expense of the organization. And the pump station boy told me, sir, are you by any way a poet? I said, yes. How did you know? He said, I read your poem, this. And I was amazed, because this boy, he reads poetry, and he looks like a poor boy with, And the same thing happened to me when I went after 1 or 2 weeks to Dubai, the big aluminum smelter. I wanted to meet the director there, and I said, could I meet? He phoned. He said, what's your name? Because I want to. He wants to tell him, Shihab Ghanem is waiting for here. I told him, Shihab Ghanem. He said, are you the poet? He was an Indian, guard in this. Then I realized that these Indian people are dangerous. They read poetry. And I found that I was well known already within a few weeks of starting this column. Through this columns which I did first in Kalish Times and then in Gulf News and other magazines after that, I became well known as a poet. And in 1996, they honored Kamla Suraya. And they called me and they honored me at the same time. We were honored together. So Kamla Suraya, I gave her my book, she gave me her book, and she went up to the podium and started saying great things about me. We have a very wonderful love poet with us here, and then she started reading the translation of one of my poems. It was I translated into English and published them in books and so on. That is how I became very much involved in translation, and I have translated about 35 books or something like that. Some to Arabic from different languages, including Indian, Malayalam, and other Indian languages, and the other way, translating Arabic poetry into English.
So, from India, what poetry did appeal you the most?
When I was at school, I only had heard of two or three Indian poets: Tagore, Iqbal, Muhammad Iqbal, and Tagore, and Ghanem. I heard also the name. That's all. I never knew about any. Then when I got to know Kamala Suraya, other Indian poets came to me. One of them came to me and said, "This is sent to you by Sachi Dhanandan." Sachi Dhanandan, he's a famous Indian poet. He says his poetry is like that. And all the Indian poets in the UAE, in Abu Dhabi, in Dubai, came to visit me one by one. So sometimes they came in groups. So this place has been visited by Indian poets maybe at least 20, 30 times. Some very famous poets. Sachi Dhanandan has been here a couple of times to my house. Then he was the head of the Sahitya Academy. No, but then I translated more than 60, 70 Malayalam poets, and also many Indian poets. And then I was given the Tagore Peace Award, and I began to receive awards like I showed you. Then SGI approached me, and I became friends with Rakesh and with Dr. Akash, and we came up together with the idea of the Poetic Heart. And we started in 2011. We agreed about it. In 2012, we started it, and I still am amazed at how it is still going from strength to strength and beauty to beauty, and all due to the diligence of the Poetic Heart team. They are all very well disciplined people, and some of the Muslims are, by nature, they have to be disciplined, because we have to pray 5 times a day. We have to, keep so many things, and that gives you a lot of discipline. And I am amazed at the discipline and the good behavior and wonderfulness of SGI team. That's why I continue to be friends, very closer and closer friends.
Poetic Heart is committed to only humanity, friendship, peace, and this is very committed agenda.
Yeah, this is a very good question.
Yes.
Very good question. Not only with Poetic Heart, I have got a WhatsApp group, which is the first group in the world to produce books. We have already produced 14 books. One of them is 2 fat volumes, there. And one thing in this group, I have 4 ex-ministers of culture from different countries in the Arab world, members with me. From Algeria, this man, he was in fact nominated for to be the president. And one from Syria, he was very much involved in the negotiations before Assad ran away. He was trying to get the settlement, and he's still with me. And one minister from UAE, now he's also minister and also head of the UAE University, and one from Sudan. These are ministers, but I have also diplomats, but mostly they are poets, and they are from different political directions. So when we started this Poetic Heart, this group, which is a WhatsApp group, we agreed on one thing. I said, please don't discuss politics, because you will fight and the project will fail. Let us concentrate on culture, poetry, education, whatever, subjects. We kept it only for the arts and culture and things like that. We don't do what you call it health, because there is a lot of health WhatsApps are interesting, but we said, okay, we'll not discuss that. Don't talk about this food is good, this bad food, but we avoid anything which is controversial. We have sects even in the Islam. We have Shia, we have Sunni, we don't discuss these controversial or any subject that will cause a big friction. So let us keep it like that. Huh? I know it is difficult. All of them have their political ideas, but even some of them ministers, as I told you, but we avoided politics. And the same thing we did it with Poetic Heart. The two, and that's why because we avoid that. And also this country here, UAE, is a moderate country. They don't like to have, they have more than 200 nationalities. Each nationality the Pakistani and the Indian may have differences, this and that may have. So the best thing is to keep them, we are here friends. We are here only to be polite to each other, to be love or be at least polite, but not have political differences. Otherwise, UAE would not have succeeded, and my WhatsApp group wouldn't have succeeded. From the beginning, when there were some people who tried to attempt to write politics, and one man withdrew. He said, "Oh no, you are saying something bad about my country." He left. Then I brought him back. He came back, but we told them, "Please, we are serious. We don't want to have any political problems." But as a person, I write political poetry, which is sensible, because this country here doesn't tolerate extremism, doesn't tolerate and I'm well known, so you have to know what you are saying, sensible, and even when I recited yesterday, I recited a poem about UAE, a poem about Sheikh Sultan. This is semi-political in a way, because I'm talking about political people. But it is a positive kind of poetry, not a negative kind of poetry. If you want to do it on, but when I write and publish, I write what I say, but I take the responsibility. First, if it is very negative, they will not publish it. If they think it is negative, they will not publish it. But luckily, I have nearly all my life, I have got everything I sent, they publish it. Not here only, in many countries. I publish in Egypt, I publish in Saudi Arabia, I publish in Kuwait, I publish sometimes in also foreign countries, but sometimes they write to me. When the corona was here, from America they wrote to me. They want me they put a book about corona and asked me to participate a poem, and I did, and it was published and sent to me. So, but politics, I am a moderate person, and therefore, alhamdulillah, no problems. The first one was Taj Mahal. When I visited it when I was at Urki, I went with my wife. I was in my honey year. A few months maybe I was already married. And it was so wonderful to go with my wife there and see the beauty. And I was flabbergasted by the beauty of Taj Mahal. It's I think the most beautiful building, monument you can see in the world. Huh? And then I wrote a poem, because in Kerala, I wrote a poem about Tagore. And these are poems, My father wrote about also India. He wrote a poem about, he says, after he saw the film, Gandhi, the Hollywood film, he wrote a nice poem, a long poem, which at one time it was published and in the Consulate General of UAE. They put it all 3-4 pages, and he wrote about. In fact, he wrote the first poem on the day of the independence of India and Pakistan. He wrote in 1947. He had a poem written, and he mentioned Pakistan, he mentioned India, and then he wrote this poem about Gandhi, and he wrote also a poem when he went to Kashmir. He called it on the Lake Dal. He was there. Actually, when I was in Roorkee, we had to go and visit all parts of India, the part of the course, because we visited the big dams, Bhakra Dam, this dam, Srinagar, this. We went to the different, all the big famous dams. And India had lots of dams, even in the 60s. When I went there, 1968, 69, I visited all the famous dams and canals in India as part of the requirements of our master degree. And I went and stayed in Shikara for 1 or 2 nights in Srinagar. And then again, I was invited by the Indian Consul General here for a 10-day visit of India at his expense, at the expense of the Indian government, the cultural department. And they took me in all parts of Kerala. It was only in Kerala, but they took me in all types of Kerala, places of Kerala, including riverboat and backwaters and this and that, and it was a beautiful. And they put me in first-class hotels, all super hotels, the ones that received the awards and things like that, in different parts of Kerala.
So it is all wonderful and never to be forgotten by all of us. So we are extremely thankful to you.
Thank you very much. I am grateful to you to take, to give me the chance to converse with you and to build bridges with you. and because through you, you will build bridges in your words, you write in the newspapers. So we are all, in this world, only temporary. We don't last long. But during this period, you should do the maximum of good you can.